Hi again then guys, and welcome to the very first video that I've ever done for Forza 1. That's probably pretty ironic given the amount of content that I've done for pretty much every other Forza game. I've owned them all, I've played them all, but up until yesterday I had never played Forza 1. As weird as that seems, because my Forza experience started with, as I've said before, the second game. And I was sure that I tried to play this game on my Xbox 360 and that it didn't work. But a member who I'm very grateful to on the HSG Discord server, which if you're not a member of, it's free, and you should be because we have some great conversations over there, but a member highlighted to me that you actually can play this game on the 360 now. And that's awesome, because alongside Project Gotham 1 and 2, which I found you can also play on there, that means we've got 3 more games to add onto the channel, which I've wanted to cover for a long time. So now I can finally cover literally all Forza games. Not quite simultaneously, but pretty much. And what better place to start than with, of course, one of the unique unicorns, in a general sense, from this first game. Because the main thing that was worrying me about going back to Forza 1 is how many unique cars are actually going to be on there, because as far as I was aware, the majority of the cars from the first game were featured in Forza 2 as well. And although that is true, for those who don't know the way that I review cars from Forza, I basically review the car in the newest Forza game that you can get it on, because there's no real point in reviewing the same car in every game. So for instance, the Chrysler ME412 was featured in this game, but it was featured last in Forza 2, so I'll review it in that game, and so on and so forth. So how many unique cars was this first game really going to have? Well, I was pleasantly surprised, because there are actually 14 unique cars in the first game that none of the other Forza games have had since. And this is one of them. How crazy is that, that the Mercedes CLK-DTM was never featured again? And if you think this one's crazy, just wait for some of the other ones. The CLK GTR race car is in this game, and although the CLK GTR road car was featured again in most of the other Forza titles, the race car was only featured here. Now I'm going to have to work through the game a bit to unlock some of the cars to review, but this one you can drive straight away in quick race mode. And of course we do technically have other DTM cars from Mercedes, from Audi, later on, even as recently as Forza 4, but that's it. They weren't featured after that, and I do think that as far as these, you could say, unicorns from the past of the franchise go, I think that DTM cars as a whole actually have a really good chance of coming back, especially now that the governing bodies of Super GT and DTM are considering merging the rulebook because of how similar they are. If that does happen, I would not be at all surprised if we see a return of DTM, maybe to Forza 7, perhaps to Forza 8. But with that in mind, this particular DTM car is the only one of its type in the franchise, because of course we do have technically 2 DTM cars later on. In Forza 3, Forza 4 we had the Mercedes C-Class Touring Car and the Audi A4 Touring Car, which are both DTM machines, and there were a couple of different variations of the Audi in particular, but they're not called DTM cars, even though of course they are, and they were later models, whereas this is an early 2000s option, and it's a coupe based DTM car rather than a 4-door sedan. So it's a unique vehicle as far as the franchise goes, and in a similar way to something like the Ford V8 supercar in the Gran Turismo franchise, it's the only one of its kind to be featured in the game, so it has no direct rivals, which is kind of a shame, but it's still cool of course that the car was featured at all. Now the category that this particular Mercedes runs in is GTS, which puts it as a direct rival against stuff like your Corvette race cars. Some of the Vipers I believe are in the similar kind of category, so it's got some good rivals, and in terms of the spec sheet, it's a strong performer. It's got over 600 horsepower, 604, 572 pound-feet of torque, and of course, being a touring car, it's not that heavy. 1,080 kilos means that the horsepower per tonne is just under 560, so it's very strong across the board, and of course that's pretty obvious from a DTM car. They're always very good, and that's kind of one of the reasons why I think it's strange that you don't see more of them in most games, because the one thing in common with any game that features DTM cars, be it Gran Turismo, Tonne, Forza, whatever the case may be, is that the games that do have them, even Test Drive Unlimited for instance had an Audi A4 DTM as a DLC car, which is random but pretty cool. Every time you see one, they're always one of the best cars in the game. Not just in a straight line or not necessarily just around corners, but for the overall track package, they are formidable opponents. Just think of some of them. In Gran Turismo, for instance, the Astra touring car, the Alfa 155, the Calibra, the Mercedes CLK touring car, they are formidable opponents. In Forza, for instance, in Forza 3, Forza 4, both the Audi and the Mercedes, but particularly the Audi A4, they are dominating cars in the R2 category. They're really, really good because they have excellent handling, excellent cornering speed, but they're really good for acceleration and straight line speed as well, to the point where they can actually beat certain GT1 cars, GT3s, even sometimes punching above their own power. And again, across the board, that's the same. Test Drive Unlimited, the Audi is a great car, Forza, Gran Turismo, so it is a shame that they're not featured more because they are so good. Now, of course, in a general sense, the physics and the graphics don't hold up as well from the first Forza game as they do even from the second game onward. Forza 2 actually holds up really well. It's got some of my favourite physics of the whole franchise, and the graphics hold up outstandingly well for its age. This one, not so much. It's a little bit pasty here, a little bit scratchy looking there, and of course the physics don't have the nuance of the later games, but it's still nuanced enough to have a genuine difference between cars. And this Mercedes was the first vehicle that I drove in the game, along with a couple of others afterward, and you can definitely feel the difference. Of course, this is one of the best handling cars out there, and the only real disadvantage to the way it performs is that it's a little on the heavy side. But that's not necessarily a disadvantage, because it means that 9 times out of 10 you can throw the car into a corner with a massive amount of downforce, colossal grip, and it will do exactly what you want it to do. Just back off the throttle a little bit, you can coast into the corner, although I will say that you might need to brake a little bit earlier than you'd assume you'd need to, because the brakes are powerful, but the car builds up speed so quickly that you can kind of end up going faster than you think you are. But overall, it's a strong car, and the pricing is pretty good as well at 387,000 credits. So it's one of the slightly more expensive cars in the game, but it's nowhere near the most expensive. It's a couple of $100,000 off that level. Overall then, I would say that this is an excellent unicorn from the first game, and when I first saw it in the lineup of vehicles, because I'd never played the game before, I didn't even realise that this one was featured, and when I saw it, I thought that was fantastic. It gave me flashbacks to stuff like Tonne Race Driver 3, which of course has a similar kind of DTM lineup, even with stuff like the Opel Vectra touring car as well, which is kind of a unicorn in its own way as far as gaming goes. But yeah, I think it's awesome to have this car in the first game. This one, along with pretty much all of the others that I'm going to feature, I would say are excellent reasons to go back and play this first game. And now that I found out that you can play it on your Xbox 360, so you don't even have to buy more than one console, yeah, I definitely recommend it. You can pick up the game cheap, you can go back, you can drive cars like this straight away in Quick Race, and just get a feel for not only how the franchise has evolved and changed over the years and gotten better and more authentic, but also just to experience these really cool cars that for various reasons, be it licensing or otherwise, weren't featured since. But that's it for this pick overall. Of course, I'll see you guys next time, and for now, as always, thanks for watching.